Welcome to another episode of News Dose, where I give you some of the latest news, rumors, and speculation on the game industry. So it looks like Remedy got the publishing rights to Alan Wake, so we're going to talk a little bit about that and what it means for the future of Remedy Entertainment and the Alan Wake franchise. We also now know that Sony is looking for acquisitions for more first-party studios, and while we have been able to speculate on this for a while now, hearing it come from Sony themselves makes this a lot more interesting. So there's a lot to get into today, and as always, if you like the video, hit that thumbs up button, and subscribe for more content similar to this, reviews, and top 10s. Also make sure to hit that little bell button if you want to get those notifications sent straight to your email to stay up to date with gaming news. But before we get into some of the bigger news, we got some more information on Crash Racing's Grand Prix, and the rewards that you get. It seems kind of like a season, and we still don't really know what kind of challenges that you will have to complete, but there will be a new track, characters, and items to unlock. Some of the skins actually look really cool, and I'd like to get that biker outfit for Crash myself. This will all be starting on July 3rd, and it ends on July 28th. So if you're interested in it, you'll need to get those rewards in that time frame. We also got a few more pictures from the upcoming Witcher show coming to Netflix this year. We got to see all three: Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri. Personally, I think it looks much better than what I was expecting, though Yennefer looks a little younger than I had envisioned, but overall it is much better than what we saw with that armor just a few short months ago. I'm happy to see Geralt looks pretty good in these pictures at the very least, but of course the actual quality of the show is still up in the air considering game movies really doesn't usually work out, but luckily Witcher was a book before a game, so hopefully this one turns out well. In other news, we may be getting a physical release for Final Fantasy VIII Remastered. This one is actually still a rumor, but there is a retailer, Base.com, that is already selling a physical copy, or they're selling physical copies of Final Fantasy VIII for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. I know nothing about the website myself, so I'm not going to recommend you go purchase from them, but there is another retailer that I do know, which is PlayAsia, that also has the exact same listing. Granted, the price seems to be very high at $60, something that you wouldn't really expect from a remaster. Hopefully that isn't the actual price, but still worth keeping an eye out for if you want a physical copy of Final Fantasy VIII. So the big one I think that is on most people's mind is probably that Remedy has gained the publishing rights to Alan Wake from Microsoft. Alan Wake released 9 years ago in 2010 as an Xbox 360 exclusive, but it did later come to PC, and it had some post-launch releases, such as American Nightmare, but it never really got its planned sequel, and there has been some back and forth on the reasons to why that was the case. Even earlier this year, in an interview, Remedy had this to say: "We were working on Alan Wake 2 years ago, and it just didn't pan out, so there's nothing. We're just booked solid for the next couple of years, really. We do own the Alan Wake IP, but it's never quite as simple as that. But yeah, we do own it." If we read between the lines here, it really does seem as if Microsoft may have been the ones who were holding up Alan Wake 2 from happening, since at the time they did own the publishing rights, and they likely didn't go forward with Alan Wake 2 because the first game may not have met expectations. And back in 2018, Remedy CEO Tero Virtala, and I know I probably botched that guy's name, and I'm sorry, but he had this to say about Alan Wake and Quantum Break. "Considering our history, Alan Wake was really interesting, but it was a collaboration with Microsoft. Due to certain reasons, it never got a sequel, and now for the second time, being in a position where we had done all that groundwork and then there was not a possibility to continue those stories, we didn't want to face that again." And now that Remedy has regained the publishing rights for Alan Wake, I really don't think there is too much left to say on why there was no Alan Wake 2. It was always planned to have a sequel ending on a big cliffhanger, and both Alan Wake and Quantum Break probably just didn't meet expectations by Microsoft. I actually like Xbox a lot, but one thing that they are really guilty of is not nurturing their franchises unless they're a big hit. Of course, Xbox has changed a lot in the last couple of years with them getting more support from the Microsoft Corporation, but when it comes to Remedy, I think it was a little too late for them, because I think we're starting to see that they left on bad terms after the release of Quantum Break. Now granted, there's really no proof of this, but I don't think that they did end on the greatest of terms. Their next game is Control, a multi-platform game published by 505 Games, and Sony has the marketing rights for it. I mean, really, it even looks just like Quantum Break, which again is just really an unfortunate situation all around. But hopefully this does mean that we will at least see Alan Wake 2 after all these years. I think we all deserve to see this great story to the finish, and if you haven't played Alan Wake, I do encourage you to go play it out. It is a really good game. I actually think the gameplay is really solid, and the story, in my opinion, is excellent. But, I want to see why it's an ocean and not a lake. Now, as previously noted, they did say they're booked for years, but I absolutely think that Alan Wake 2 has to be planned, or else why would they get the publishing rights for it? At the very least, I think we can expect to see some kind of remaster for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and the Nintendo Switch. So I think that has to happen at the very least. Now the next question would be, who would publish Alan Wake 2? And I actually don't think that would be very hard to sell to publishers. But before we get into that, let's talk about Sony for a moment. CEO Jim Ryan in an interview talked about looking for acquisitions for first-party studios. Now I don't think this should come as any surprise, as Sony really is no strangers to making acquisitions, but it certainly has been a while since their last acquisitions, which I believe was Sucker Punch in 2011 and Media Molecule in 2010. And since then they have shut down 4 different studios: Evolution, Big, Zipper Interactive, and Gorilla Cambridge. And now that Microsoft is going on a shopping spree, and I think they've added around 9 studios in the last year, not sure on the exact number, and Google is entering the market, I think at this moment, it's the perfect time to be looking around. The thing is, who are they going to acquire? And the first 2 that I think is going to pop into most people's mind is Remedy Entertainment and Insomniac. Obviously, considering these 2 news pieces came so close to one another, of course, gets people to speculate that Remedy will be up for an acquisition. And I do think it's plausible, but I don't think it'll happen, and I'll explain why in a moment. We do know that Sony has the marketing rights for Control, and we also know that Remedy has visited several Sony first-party studios. But this type of thing does happen in the industry, so it's not completely unheard of, and it doesn't necessarily signify an acquisition. With that said, it does show that they do seem to have a good relationship with one another, so you can't rule it out completely either. But here's the reason I think it's not going to happen. Remedy seems to like being an independent studio, and as long as they can afford to stay independent and they can find publishers, I think that they'll remain independent. Now, to be fair, I think the type of games that Remedy makes fits perfectly with Sony being third-person cinematic games, which is their specialty. Remedy also really seems to value PC gaming, and if they were to go Sony exclusively, then the likes of the future Remedy games being on PC would drop dramatically. And a spokesperson for Remedy had this to say about Alan Wake's publishing rights. The only thing we want to clarify, now that Remedy owns the publishing rights, is that we could bring Alan Wake to different platforms if we so choose. Now the key word here is platforms, which signifies that it would be multi-platform, which is the main reason I don't think it's happening right now at the very least. Now Insomniac is another one that I don't think is very plausible for similar reasons. We know Ted Price values being independent, and they are making boatloads of money being an independent studio, and that hasn't really changed. They really have no reason to be acquired, and they can just continue to work with Sony the way they have been, and still make a lot of money. I think developers such as Ready at Dawn and House Marquee makes a lot more sense, as of this moment at the very least. I would actually like to hear some of your all's thoughts on this, and who you think could be possible acquisitions, so let me know in the comments below. Anyways, that is it for this episode of News Dose, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Peace out.